come down and talk to everybody. So I was like, I'm gonna take a minute and come down and talk to some people. So we are started here and we've got people online. Great. I'm gonna say okay there, get that out of the way. All right, so welcome. It's October. Is everyone in the spirit, like Pat said? She has her little ghost earrings on. It's always a great month, October. I really love the weather and getting out and just the change of the season, the planting. I hope everyone's gotten their native plants lately from all the native plant sales that have been in the Low Country. If you haven't, there are still more plant sales. Oh, there we go. Terry Lynn has leftover plants from plant sales. What you got, Terry?
I have Begonia.
Begonia? Crossvine.
Lovely.
I think I saw it at the MUSC. You put it out on MUSC. You have some grasses?
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
I have several different types of milkweed.
Milkweed.
Perennis and particulate.
Okay.
Both and a pot. They're both very good.
So how does somebody,
You can email me at herbertl@musc.edu.
Herbert L at musc.edu if you're interested in getting some of these plants that are native plants.
Less expensive.
Oh, they're less expensive than the plant sale. Can't beat it. So, yeah, I've been to several of the native plant sales over the last several years, and you should see my native plant bed. It's huge. All the pollinators are out there. They're loving it. The bee balm, they're all over it. It's great. I love going out there and messing around in it. All right, so our membership has been growing. We're up to 1,500 members, so yay. Thank you to everyone who's been talking about him. I almost said him, the Sierra Club. And yeah, so our mission is to explore, enjoy, and protect the wild places of the earth. And we're going to get right to that once I get this going. Okay. All right, so I'm the chair. I'm Christine Von Kalmitz. Several of our members of the members of our leadership team are in the audience. You want to just raise your hands. All right, so chat with them if you're interested in helping more. Sierra Club outings. Rebecca, do you want to talk to that since Amanda's not here?
If you'll pass me that mic.
Yes.
So as you can see, we have a couple of field trips hosted by Amanda Vokes, our outings leader chair, including a marshalling of the Pitt Street Bridge coming up on the 11th. Black River Cypress Preserve at the beginning of October is not to be missed. If you have not been there yet, then you're welcome. On the 8th of November. And then a Sea Rise stroll at Brittle Bank Park. Now, Sea Rise, Christine, can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, I just heard about this. So I think it's through the aquarium. And they're doing these strolls in different parts of the Low Country, not just downtown. I think there's one next week, maybe in Mount Pleasant. And so they're getting people out to, physically see the rise at the times that it's expected to happen, so that you can A, experience it, B, understand it, where it's happening, why it's happening, what's being done about it, if anything. So we're gonna partner with the aquarium for this particular tour. Wear boots. It's probably good advice. I hope that's on the website. That is true. Lockwood does flood. Oh, at Brittle Bank too. Want to let us know that Sierra Club actually volunteered many, well, not many, but maybe say in the last 5 to 10 years to put out an oyster bed there along Brillo Bank Park and the Ashley River, and it was a research site for the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. Okay, before we get to tonight's topic, next month we're gonna have Dan Beecher, and he's gonna be talking about DeVoe Bank, and maybe many of you have seen his book about DeVoe Bank, and hope you come on back to hear him talk about it. Okay, so tonight we're talking about fire in the forest, and I just had an experience. This is a picture from the Pecos Wilderness in New Mexico. This is last week, and just wanted to show you this and my experience. So we're walking into the wilderness, unaware that this was where we were headed. And we didn't actually get to this the first day. So we're walking in there, beautiful wilderness, just stunning. Wildflowers were beautiful, trees were beautiful, there are all kinds of pines, all kinds of aspen leaves were turning color, and we were just really excited about this hike. We were gonna be in there for 3 nights and just, backpacking and just having a good old time. So everything went okay the first day, but I remember, commenting to the people I was with that, hey, I don't really hear a lot of birds. I don't see them either. And, normally when we're in a forest like this, there's chipmunks running around. And there's lots of pine trees here, and they have all this food on them, and there's lots of grasses with the seed heads. I didn't understand it. Where was the wildlife? I didn't see any big wildlife, little wildlife. It was just really disturbing the first day. So the second day we get up and we're gonna go where that mountain is. It's called Pecos Baldy, and sort of around the side is a lake that you can't see. So we're gonna go up there, and we're gonna go to that lake. So we go through this beautiful meadow again, lots of wildflowers, lots of grasses, beautiful area. We come around the corner and bam, this is what we see. And we go down to the river that's down there that you can't see, we cross it, we go across, and we're in that mass of trees over there. And we were just wearing ourselves out. The path was still there, the normal trail, but we would lose it. And then we'd go, okay, where are the cut trees? So we were looking for cut trees to find the path again. And we'd find a cut tree and get it back on the path. We did that several times. And we just really wore ourselves out trying to go over trees, under trees, around them. It was very disheartening. At some point we were just like, we're not gonna make our goal and get back to our camp before nightfall. So we just had to cut it and go back. And that was our hike for the day. We did see some bear scat. We did see one large dead mammal. And that's the only wildlife we saw. So it was really disheartening. This fire happened to be in 2023, and I read about it later because I was really interested. It was a prescribed fire that got out of hand. And it had joined forces with another fire that had been, I guess they thought they had stopped that fire in April, but it caught back up in January, started going. So these 2 fires, I think it was, I might not be getting the months right, but anyway, there was a long period of time between stopping the fire and that fire starting again. It was just really weird to hear this. So these 2 fires joined forces and burned a ton of that wilderness. So the next day, we're like, okay, we're gonna go to another lake, and this is gonna be better. And because we had seen the area on the way up to where we were going, so we were going down and over. And we get up there, lots of trees down, having a hard time. We're like, okay, what's going on? And we see somebody else coming down the trail, and she tells us that it's mostly pine bark beetle. So this forest is still alive, but it's being eaten alive by pine bark beetles. And so there's lots of trees down over there too. So that, after those 2 days, it was definitely more understandable that all the wildlife wasn't there and all the birds and that sort of thing. But it still was, it was hard, on my heart at least, to be walking through this landscape and wondering if the area the second day was going to be burning soon too, because here we have all this fuel on the ground from the pine bark beetle that's having all these trees fall everywhere. So our forests are getting devastated all over the country, and the reason we picked New Mexico was because it didn't have any fires this year. We were gonna go to Wyoming, but it was on fire. So, we try to go out west somewhere every year, and we have been experiencing the problem of not being able to go like to half a dozen places we would go because they're all on fire. So this is, we're gonna hear a lot more about this from our speaker tonight. So this is Daryl Jones, and he's with the Forest Protection. He's a Forest Protection Chief for the South Carolina Forestry Commission. He holds a BS degree in Forest Resource Management from Clemson University, and his interest in prescribed fire began at age 6 when he helped his grandfather conduct a burn on the family farm. And I hear from Daryl that his children are following right in his footsteps, and they both wanted their own little drip canisters for their birthdays when they turned 11.
Great.
So, welcome.
Hey.
Yeah, so let me help you with this IT real quick.
I don't know if I want to do this or that. How y'all doing? My name's Daryl. I grew up in Sumter County, so not too far away. I've been with the commission since 1985. I was 16 years old. I started working with them, and I've been there ever since. I've been the fire chief for 20 years this year. I've been a firefighter for the whole time. I've been to 38 states fighting fires, but I'd much rather stay home and light prescribed fires than go fight fires, right? So I'm gonna talk a lot about our fires and what we kind of have, how our fires happen and the seasons we have, and then we'll talk about prescribed burning and how it can help and how it already has helped us, and maybe try and compare some of what's different between the landscape here and out where all these big fires occur. I just came back from Idaho on a fire summit last Thursday, I think. And I was in, let's see, where did I go this year? I went to Oregon, and I went to Southern California, and I went to Mississippi this year. So, and this particular photo, this is South Carolina. That's not California, right? That's here. And I'll talk about our fires and let you kind of see what we see. And I like this, we have the luxury here to do controlled burns, prescribed burns, right? To help manage our fuels and things that are less easy to do in some parts of the country. And that's one reason our fire situation is different, right? Our climate's different, our seasonality is a little different. But prescribed fire is part of the solution, right? So there we go. I'm going to talk way back. I'll go back, but you probably know this, but there's a long history of fire here, right? Fires used to happen with lightning, and they would just burn and meander, and they would run to a wet area, and they would stop maybe or smolder, and then it get dry and windy, and they come back. And the landscape here was really forged by that, right? That's how most of our ecosystems here developed, or what maintains them was that history of fire. And we know that's here. There's good records of that. And lightning, fire is part of our world, right? It's part of why South Carolina looks like it is, and why people will move here because of the way it looks. Part of that is the fire maintained ecosystems, that sort of history that goes back to it. We know Native Americans used it. This is a picture from 1850 something. Frederick Law Olmsted painted this photo of Native people using fire, and it was a tool to them, right? They maintained their area with it. It made it easier to see game that they may be hunting, or maybe to see enemies coming. they knew stuff that we didn't know. My granddad taught me to burn, right? He knew that fire did good things, but didn't know how or why. He didn't really care. He just wanted the results. But he knew that if you burn an area, you would have less ticks than you have in an unburned area, right? University of Georgia did a study 10 years ago and found that there's 80% less ticks in an area that's burned than an area that's not burned. And if you're a native tribe that's moving around and camping on the ground, is that pretty important? You know, that's smart, makes sense, right? So they use it as a tool. And then we had early settlers that came in. This is the 1880 census. Charles Singer Sargent, I don't know whose idea it was, but he was asked in the 1880 census to document where fires were happening. Darker brown means more fire. How much of the southeast do you see brown? A whole lot, right? Almost all of South Carolina was seeing fire in 1880. So the people that settled were learning from the people that were here before them, and they learned to use fire, and they were, this sounds kind of cheesy, but they had a relationship with fire, right? They knew fire was part of the landscape. They knew it was something that they could use. They knew it was necessary for a lot of the stuff they were doing. So it was something that they learned. This is a picture of the coastal plain of South Carolina in 1900, right? The early settlers that came through, William Bartram and all those folks said that there were big pines that were widely spaced. There was grasses and things on the forest floor and not much. So you got to the canopy of the trees, right? That is fire, right? That's why it looks that way. It was maintained by periodic fire, and there's different fire regimes, but 3 to 5 years in most of the coastal plain. Some wet areas may be longer, in the mountains it may be different. But there was a periodic fire that was coming through, naturally started, right? Then human settlement happened and the causes changed. And we'll talk about that. But this was the landscape, right? And then we had the period of logging and destructive wildfires when, you know, maybe people didn't understand that the resources weren't endless, so they would cut some trees and plant a field, and when that field didn't work, they'd cut more trees. You know, the westward expansion and the whole settlement of the country, right? Poor wood use, a lot of the wood was left to not being used, only sort of the bottom part of the tree, and that led a lot of fuel, right? And some of the fires that happened were bad. In 1898, there was a 3 million acre wildfire in South Carolina. 3 million acres. It was a dry period. I've got the news clippings. I've started writing a story I never have finished, but a dry period, a series of lightning storms happened and started fires that burned together, burned from, think about South Carolina, I should have put a map up. Aiken and Orangeburg, all the way across Columbia to the state line, and kept going to North Carolina. 3 million acres, right? 1898, I mean, it's a little bit ago, but it wasn't ancient history, right? That fire was happening here, and there was people on the landscape. Very few people died. I think there were 14 people that died. There were some homes and some sawmills lost, but what the research I've done shows the people that saw that fire coming knew what to do. They went out and they lit around their buildings to burn off the fuel and protect their investments, right? So they understood fire. I'm kind of going back to that relationship. I get philosophical, y'all just stop me. But people understood fire and they knew how to use it, right? So that was part of it. This is one of the clippings. I got a lot of slides to cover, but it was bad, right? Fire was everywhere. People burned out around their homes. There were some sawmills lost. There were a lot of accounts of people being trapped on the road and wagons burning and letting the horse loose and all this stuff, right? It's pretty cool to read about. And then there was the fire suppression period, right? After that, all the fuel in the Great Lakes, you know, they would cut down the hemlocks and just take the bark because they'd get tannin out of it, and they'd leave the trees. So you had fuel and you had big fires and all these historic fires, the Peshtigo fire and the summer of 1910, what in fire we call the Big Burn. Something like 5 million acres burned inside of a 10-day period in the US, right? The Forest Service, the US Forest Service started in 1905, and their policy after that was every fire has to be dead out by 10 a.m. the next day. If I find a fire today, my goal was to put it out all the time, every fire by 10 a.m. the next day, dead out, right? So everybody sort of was learning that fire was bad, right? And so the people who had been using fire generation before, all of a sudden were hearing that fire is not good, all fire is bad, and they started questioning, you know, using fire as a tool like I did when I was a kid, right? Under supervision, I need to add, but I did, right? Learn about it and understand how it worked. And so if you ask my children a few years ago, they're older now, what I did, they tell you my job was I was Smokey Bear, right? I'm the fire chief for the state. I'm over fire and law enforcement shops and aviation and response and aircraft, everything, right? So Smokey has a good message. What does Smokey say? I don't know what Smokey says, right? Only you can prevent forest fires. That's what Smokey used to say. What does Smokey say now? Fire. Right. And so what's the difference? A wildfire is a wrong fire in the wrong place at the wrong time, burning stuff you don't want to burn, right? A forest fire, we kind of painted ourselves in the corner. The state foresters and the USDA Forest Service and the Ag Council own Smokey, right? And we're a fire suppression organization. I've got 300 firefighters around the state. We drive a lot of bulldozers, 10 planes, we put out a lot of fires. But we also go light fires, and it's confusing to the public. It's a difficult message. And people don't understand that fire is bad and fire can be good, and where's the line and which one's which, right? It's confusing. I tell stories because I'm from here, right? But in 2013, we had a fire in Myrtle Beach that burned 26 acres and 108 condos. It started in the woods. It ran into some homes. It's called the Windsor Green Fire. And that was on a Saturday. So before that happened, that was March of 2013. I had planned to go on Monday, the 15th, to go out with the news station, show them a prescribed burn and how cool fire was, right? So on Saturday, I went to a press conference with the chief of SLED and the governor. And we talked about how this bad fire started and how we're going to find the person that started it, and 108 people lost their homes. I was wearing my cool yellow shirt, right, my fire stuff, saying fire's bad. And on Monday, I was out in the same news market, dragging a torch, lighting fire. It's hard to communicate that this is a good fire and this is a bad fire, and this one's set on a different condition and this one's manageable. You know, it's a lot to relate to people. So it's difficult. And then we have these people, right? People that didn't burn with their granddad when they were sick, so they don't understand why you would ever light the woods on fire, because where they grew up or their understanding of it just isn't there, right? So they immediately say fire's bad because that's what we taught them, right? So I love Smokey because Smokey's important because we don't want fires to burn people and houses, but we also need to moderate that, say some fire in the right time, in the right place, done the right way can be a good thing, right? So it's confusing. So there's an education problem and there's a communication issue. How do you explain that to people and how do you make sense of it? And you throw a lot at them and they end up walking away frustrated and confused. That's my experience. I think I know too much, right? I try to tell too much to some people, but it's difficult to explain this. So what do we have in South Carolina? This fire, the Big Windy Fire, was just outside of Charleston in 2013, 14, somewhere around there. 2,500 acre fire right outside of town. But on average, we have about 3,000 wildfires a year that we go to, the Forestry Commission goes to. They burn about 20,000 acres. The average fire is about 7 acres. That's not the same as California, right? I was the incident commander for a 1 million acre fire 2 years ago in California. And 9,500 people and 200 aircraft working for me on one fire, right? That's horrible. It's not fun. But we have a lot of fire, but our fires are generally smaller, and there's a lot of reasons. Terrain is part of it, fuels are part of it, our climate's part of it, all this. The tools we have are different than what they have. They work better here. So there's a lot of reasons. This doesn't count fires that the fire department goes to that's, the size of, one of these tables, and they squirt it out. They don't need us, right? They go to the fires. We have jurisdiction over every wildfire in unincorporated areas of the state. That's what state law says, the Forestry Commission. The county or the fire department does too, because it's their fire district. So if they go to it and squirt it out and it's nothing, they don't need a bulldozer, they don't call me. If it exceeds what they can do, they need to go in the woods where they can't chase the fire and it's unsafe to walk out there. They call us, we bring bulldozers and other tools, right? So 3,000 or so a year that we respond to from the Forestry Commission side. I've got bulldozers in every county in the state. I have 160 frontline dozers and about 40 spares, sort of secondary units. And my big red fire truck is a yellow bulldozer, right? So I'm talking fire science now, but you can either take away the heat from a fire and make it go out. You put water on it, right? You can take away the oxygen by smothering it, putting dirt on top of it, or you can remove the fuel. In most of South Carolina, a bulldozer is the easiest way to do it. You go in front of the fire, you push everything that's burnable, the vegetation and leaves, and you get down to bare soil and create a fire break. And that's how we stop most fires, right? That's why the bulldozers work. I can tell you from my experience out west, just in Idaho recently, there's almost no ground on that fire where a bulldozer work because it's too steep and rocky and they aren't the right tools. So in that case, you have to use different tactics, right? You're either doing it from the air or you're sending 20-man crews with hand tools to go dig lines. It's a different way to approach the fire because of topography and all the soil limitations and all that. So it's different. I've talked about this, but we go to wildfires almost every day. This isn't current data, but about 3 years ago, I ran a report. There were 11 days in the previous 5 years where we didn't go to at least one wildfire in South Carolina. Think about a 5-year period when there's only 11 days without one wildfire. They aren't severe wildfires for the most part. Most of them are small, right? Our fire department friends are there and they're holding it with water and they wait for us to bring a bulldozer to the fire break to make sure it stays where it's supposed to be. But what it gets to is we have peaks in the fire season where it gets more active because of weather patterns and dry conditions and all that. And then we have periods where there might be a few fires, but the fuels are moist, the humidity's high, and the fire's not really spreading very fast, right? So we get 54 inches or so of rain a year average. Los Angeles County gets about 14 inches a year. Northern California gets about 30 inches a year. So we have a long growing season. A lot of stuff grows during the summer. I love that, but I'm also a pessimist. Because everything that's growing right now is about to die for the fall, and it's going to be sitting there and dry in February, and it's going to be able to burn, right? I'm never happy, my wife says. We get a lot of rain, everybody says, boy, you ought to be happy. There's no fires. Yep, everything's growing. It's going to be burning one day, right? So it's a cycle the way it goes, but we do have fire year round. Most fires we go to and we put them out in an hour or two. We send one dozer and one supervisor and we figure out where to put in the fire breaks and we use fight fire with fire. Sometimes we do burnouts, put in a fire break and light the edge of it. The fire burns toward the wildfire and it starves at a fuel. You ever heard fight fire with fire? That's what we do all the time, right? Tactically applying fire to burn out the unburned fuel to make your fire break home. That's really what it amounts to, right? So for wildfires, we do a lot of that technical sort of stuff. We do have bigger fire seasons. This spring was a really busy, probably the busiest in 15 years we've had for its number of fires. March 1st, this is our map on the right side. All those dots are wildfires. Within about 2 hours on March 1st, we had 104 wildfires across the state. They all started right the magic time. You hardly ever get fires in the morning because it's humid and the wind isn't up very much, right? The day starts to heat up and the humidity goes down. The winds usually pick up because there's heat rising, right? That's what drives the wind. And you have fires starting, right? So 104 fires. We had nothing much going on that morning. We knew it was dry, the wind hit and the humidity got low and everything that went on outside started a fire. It was a bad fire time. It quickly ran out of resources for me. I was trying to manage. We had fires that we didn't have people to send to. I had everybody committed. And my job was to decide the next bulldozer that's free is going to this fire because it's threatening homes and not this one that's threatening a field, right? That's what I do, right? We had a bunch of fires. This one at the bottom was the 6 Mile Mountain Fire in Pickens County. It was 175 acres. We had a fire at Arcadia Plantation in Georgetown that's on the top right. That's my air tankers that I just got on the contract for the first time in 30 years this spring, February 14th. Our lawmakers gave me the contract last year, the money, and February 14th was the first day they were on contract in state. February 15th, they flew. February 16th, they flew. February 17th, they flew every day. And for me, it protects my firefighters, right? It gives us a tool to, maybe we don't have to go fight the fire if we can use the aircraft or go so close to it. And it also makes it easier to protect homes. That's really what we're after. The Company Drive fire, you may have heard about in Myrtle Beach, started on March 1st. We fought that fire and had people on it every day for 94 days. It started right behind some homes. It started from a fire that escaped at a residence. It burned in the peat. If you ever buy peat moss at the hardware store, the peat is natural down there. There's 16 feet of peat. So it burned across the surface and then it started burning down. It was smoking and causing traffic issues and public health issues and access issues. The dozers don't hardly stand up in there. It's a really difficult place to fight fire. So that fire started March 1st. We controlled it May 21st. I don't think my math's right. I said 94 days. It is 94 days. Maybe the date's wrong. I'm not good at math. That's the Covington Drive fire on the bottom right, the nighttime view. The picture on the bottom left shows the peat burning. If you look at that picture, I don't know if you can see here, the top of the ground was 3 feet up that tree. That's where the surface was. And when the fire started burning the peat, it burns the soil. The peat soil burns. The worst smoke you can find. It's very dark and oily black smoke. And when the roots are exposed to those trees, what do you think happens when the wind hits? They fall over. There's nothing holding them up, right? So it's a difficult, really unsafe place to fight fire aggressively. You have to do it differently. So that one went on for weeks. I lived at Myrtle Beach for 4 weeks, almost. Then I went to the mountains because this fire started. The table complex started March 21st. This one happened to start, some teenage kids started it. It wasn't intentional, but they were smoking something other than a cigarette and they threw it on the ground and it started the fire, right? It was dry. North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia already had fires. Southern Appalachians were really dry. It started on the 23rd. We stayed on there till March 7th. It burned 15,973 acres, 2 fires, Table Rock State Park in Pickens County, the Greenville Watershed part of it that had all burned in 2016 in the Pinnacle Mountain Fire. So it just burned a few years ago. And one just down the road in Greenville County that also the Persimmon Ridge Fire burned a few thousand acres. You can see the bottom right is the aerial view when that fire blew up. I was running the aircraft that day. I had 14 aircraft, air tankers, helicopters. I was the air operations branch. And I had to evacuate my landing zone because the fire burned over where I was landing helicopters, right? It blew explosive fire behavior, similar to what you see other places, but just a really bad combination of dry fuels, winds going up the valleys, and a lot of days since rain. So complicated fire, difficult where the dozers don't work as much. The picture in the center of the top is the first day when it was only an acre. We put aircraft on it, but it got too dark to fly aircraft. We had to let it sit. It fell off the rock and it burned, right? 700 or so firefighters came to this fire from other states in South Carolina, North Carolina, Alabama. We called our friends to help. So if you look at wildfires by year, I don't like a lot of charts because I have to explain them. But you can see on there, the acres burned is the red line, the blue line is the number of fires. The number of fires doesn't change very much, and we'll talk about why we have so many. What changes most often is the number of acres burned. That's a reflection of drought conditions, days since rain, fuel, moisture, right? So if you kept the fuel the same moisture all year, we would probably still have fires, but they'd be smaller and burn less acres. When you get dry, like we do this March, when we had a lot of days without rain, you had dry fronts coming across that typically the Bermuda high pressure sit off the coast and they bring every 7 to 10 days, winds come by and the humidity drops. And if you have fires starting emissions on those time periods and they're in a receptive fuel bed, dry leaves and things that haven't seen water, then they start to run and the wind pushes, right? This acreage is really determined by drought and fuels rather than having fires, because we always have fire. Almost every day there's a wildfire, right? So when that aligns with the fuels being dry and the wind pushing it, we have a lot more acres burned. And every year, we lose 40 to 50 homes a year in South Carolina to wildfires. It's not 50 homes at a time most of the time. It's a wildfire that burns 1 or 2 homes because they're smaller fires and we can finally get there and stop it or get a line. California may have 100 homes or 1,000 homes burned at a time because the fires are moving so fast and terrain wise, it's difficult to stop them, right? They can't get in there. We did have in 2009, the Highway 31 fire burned 79 homes, destroyed them the first day, and 97 others got damaged enough to be condemned, right? So it does happen here, but it's rare so far to have big home losses in a single fire. The Table Rock fire, we lost 0 homes this year. The Covington Drive fire, we lost 0 homes. We saved 10,000 homes because we drew a line, we put a bunch of dozers and fire trucks that were stopping here, and it was a epic firefight, if you ask me, to try and stop all those homes from burning, because it was right in their backyards, burning their vinyl fences and burning their playgrounds, but we didn't let the homes burn. So we were successful, but we aren't always successful. Why do we have so many fires? Lightning causes less than 2% of ours. Natural causes. The only one we have is lightning. In California, I was in Oregon this year. We had 1 storm come across. We had 300 new wildfires because of that storm. Dry lightning, where the air was so dry, the fuels were dry, and the lightning was coming down and starting new fires, right? What do we get with most of our lightning? Thunderstorm, right? So there's usually more moisture, the humidity's high, and the fuels are not dry enough to let a lot of fires start. Most of our fires, almost all of our fires, are human activity. So if I break it down, almost 60% are your neighbor burning their leaf pile. They let it escape, right? 50 to 60% a year. Consistently, about 20% is arson, intentional set fires, where a neighbor's mad at somebody else, or they lost their lease on a piece of land, or they don't like the way the railroad's managing the right of way, or whatever it is, and they light it off on fire. So that's why our law enforcement is focused on enforcing fire-related and arson and timber crimes, because it is significant. The other causes are much more minor, but equipment, somebody cutting a field with a bush hog and hitting a rock on a dry day when the grass is really dry can start a fire, right? A catalytic converter malfunction on a car and pulling over on the side of the road, or a chain behind a trailer chain loose on a truck. One started 26 fires between Orangeburg and Columbia, right? Every time the chain bounced off the road, it went into the road, and we had 26 fires, right? So on the right day, it doesn't take much to start a fire, but most of them are somebody burning trash, burning limbs, and not making a notification, not having a fire break, and not staying with it till it's safe, like the law says, or ignoring burn bans and those kind of things. Yes, ma'am. Some, it's on here somewhere, but it's not many. I think that comes under equipment. No, power lines is separate. I think it's 4% on this one last year. Part of that is our winds are not as severe as some of the places out west. The Santa Ana winds in California, you get 100-mile-an-hour winds, some power lines are going to go down, right? We may have 50 and 60-mile-an-hour winds, but if our humidity is high and the fuels are not really dry, it typically doesn't cause much of a fire. It may start one, but they don't get too big. It does happen, but it's not as common as it is in more arid parts of the country, I guess. Children playing with matches is part of it, right? House fires. We're getting more and more fires that start when a home ignites and is burning, and it spreads to the woods nearby, right? The fire department gets there and they're fighting the fire, and they look behind them and the woods are on fire behind them, right? That's when they call us. So that's becoming more of a cause for us. But the 2 biggest ones consistently are people doing debris burning and intentionally set fires, whether they were malicious or whether they were, something else, but they were set by somebody. This is the fire I was over in California in 23, I think it was, the August complex. It was over 1 million acres, right? I went to fly around this fire and I had to stop in the helicopter. Well, I didn't stop. The pilot stopped and got gas. That's how big it was. You can wrap your head around a fire that big, right? But their fires are bigger because their fuels are different. They have accumulations of fuels. They have a lot more problems or issues, or I don't want to call them issues. It's not as easy to do prescribed burning out there. The slope makes it hard to stop the fires. Fire lit at the bottom of the mountain is going to run up to the top, because as that fire moves, it preheats the fuels above it. If there's less moisture in the fuels above it, it burns hotter, right? More embers get lifted because there's all this thermal stuff going on, lifting leaves and limbs and throwing them across further in front of you. They don't do a lot of forest management to reduce the fuels, right? And to some degree, that's, the forest types are different, the management should be different, but a lot of the ownership out there is federally owned, right? If you look at South Carolina versus some western states, we're a photo negative. Almost all of South Carolina is privately owned forest. Most of some states is federally owned, so the federal agencies aren't doing good management or can't do management or don't have the leeway. I don't know what the answer is. But it is a different landscape. If you look nationally, people don't think this way, but more wildfires or a lot of wildfires happen in the South. 45% of the fires last year in the whole country were in the 13 southern states, the southern region. Most people assume no fires happen here. I can think, I don't know, 50 times I've asked groups how many wildfires are in South Carolina, and they say 100. Nobody thinks about the number of fires we have, right? 31% of the large fires in 2024 were in the 13 southern states. So we hear about California, we hear about Montana and Washington, but big fires happen here, right? Texas, Oklahoma. I was on a 345,000 acre fire in Georgia a few years ago. Did you hear about it? Maybe not, right? Okefenokee Swamp burned twice, 2007, 2011, and most of it burned again in 2015. Yeah, you probably smelled it, and the smoke came here, right? We do have privately owned lands here. Most private landowners are managing it for wildlife habitat, for quail or something else. So they're doing something to maintain the habitat. Prescribed burning is part of that, right? Like I said, 66% of South Carolina is forested, 87% of that's privately owned. If you look out west, there's states where 50% of the land or more is federally owned. So maybe the management's not as aggressive or even maintained the way it should be to manage the fuels, right? So it's just different, the environment they're in. Prescribed fire is a tool to mimic what used to happen here when we had frequent fires all the time. It's cost effective, right? We do like prescribed burning as a service for landowners for $25 an acre. So if you own land, 10 acres or more, you can contract with us and we'll do the burning. We take the liability and we want to help burn and maintain the fuels. Because every fire that I do a prescribed burn on reduces fuel the next time there's a wildfire. It makes it easier for my firefighters to protect homes and property and stop the fire, right? It maintains all the ecological function. It's efficient. My personal record is 4,000 acres in a day that I burned. I did that once in Chesterfield County in 1995. I had a helicopter to light it, and it was a state forest in Chesterfield County with nothing around. It was easy. Most burns are 75 or 100 acres at a time because that's the size of the ownerships of most tracts in South Carolina. With a group, we came up the way we were trying to explain why prescribed fire is good. It's too wordy. A safe way to apply a natural process to ensure ecosystem health and reduce wildfire risk, right? Every burn, you may set out to burn it to maintain quail habitat, but you're also reducing fuels. You're managing the intensity. The next fire is not going to burn as hot because there's less fuel on the ground, right? It's just part of a process. There are legitimate reasons under state law to do a prescribed burn. It has to be for forestry, wildlife, and agriculture purposes. So if you've got 100 acres and you're burning it to manage for quail, and you call our dispatch and we'll go over some of the rules in a minute. There's guidelines and rules, regulations you have to follow. How much you can burn on a given day, where your smoke's going. You have to burn for one of these reasons. If you're burning 100 acres to manage for quail, you're doing a wildlife management burn, right? You're burning the woods to make quail habitat or whatever habitat. If you take the same 100 acres and you clear the trees to do a development, that falls under rules that are run by the Department of Environment, not the forestry burns. So our rules, we do it in conjunction with the Department of Environment, DES. I keep calling them DHEC, but that's the agency we used to work with. They are the air quality regulation agency. We're the fire agency, right? People have to notify us under state law. Anytime you do a burn outside in unincorporated areas, you're supposed to call the Forestry Commission, right? If you do a burn, you have to have a fire break, stay with it's safe. If you're doing a forest, wildlife and agriculture burn, there are limits on how much you can burn on a given day based on air quality. The goal is to allow some burning to go on, but not impact public health, public safety with the smoke, right? So there are limits on how much can be burned on a given day based on the EPA standards that they put in place that the Department of Environment manages in South Carolina. It's confusing. But we administer that on behalf of the Department of Environment. The guidelines are called smoke management guidelines. Allow us to burn and minimize impacts on air quality. We know if you don't burn the right way or if the smoke goes the wrong way, you can cause somebody with a pre-existing condition to have an asthma attack or COPD or other health issues, right? Sensitive populations can get impacted by that. Some people don't like the smell. You can put ash in somebody's swimming pool. You can do it wrong if you aren't paying attention and you don't understand the rules, you don't understand how to do it correctly. Or you could have smoke cause an accident on a road and cause a fatality, right? We've had that happen several times where a wildfire smoke laid down and obscured the road and cars ran into each other and somebody died, right? We've had it happen from a prescribed burn that was not done according to the rules. And 6 people died in an accident related to smoke. That was 20 years ago, but that was the biggest one we've ever had. Poorly done, poorly planned. So overall, we're burning about collectively all landowners, federal, state agencies, private landowners burn about 500,000 acres a year. It goes up and down, right? If it's really wet year, we burn less because the fuels are too wet and the atmosphere doesn't support burning, right? The smoke's not going to go away and it's going to stay low and impact people. If it's too dry, like this year, we burn less because we had burn bans on for a lot of March. And March is the month when most burning happens. So when we go burn ban, because we have too many fires, people can't do their prescribed burning, right? So it's a balance between public safety and the wildfire threat and allowing people to burn to manage the fuels for the future wildfire threat, if that makes sense. Most of the burning is done by private landowners on their own property. They own the land, they do the burning themselves. Our agency burns some, the U.S. Forest Service burns their land, but most of the burning is somebody burning their property for whatever objective they think is appropriate, right? Timber management, wildlife management, agriculture, site preparation to plant trees, killing diseases. There's some diseases you can manage with fire. Brown spot needle blight on lonely pines, one of them that you can burn at the right time and reduce the amount of impact to those longleaf trees, right? So most burning is private landowners, so not state or federal. So prescribed fire is more often used in the Southeast. I'm chair of this group right now, the National Coalition of Prescribed Fire Councils. We do this data download. We're starting to do it every year. We're about to publish another report, but the brown states burn more, right? You can see where burning is more of a cultural practice. People understand it and maybe are more okay with fire. Out in California, there's air quality reasons they can't burn. The federal government owns all the land that maybe doesn't get burned or doesn't burn the right way. There's all kinds of reasons. But most burning in the US happens in the Southeast because it's part of our land practice, right? We've been doing it. We're used to it. It's more socially acceptable. The air quality is better here, so we can burn more often, have more chances to burn, right? Our fuels are more receptive to it. They're adapted to it than a lot of the Western fuels or species. It's a different ecosystem. This is the rules though. There's different rules about it, but a category day goes from 1 to 5. On a category 1, you really can't burn. That means the smoke, if you burn, it's going to go up and it's not going to go very far. It's going to come down and impact somebody, right? On a category 5 day, the atmosphere is really unstable. Your smoke from your 20-acre burn is going to go way up in the atmosphere. It's going to hit a lot of wind. It's going to get spread out. It's not going to be dense enough to impact public health or public safety, right? So it's based on the capacity of the atmosphere to absorb that smoke and spread it out. So it's not a problem to anybody on the ground. That's really what smoke management does. The further you are away upwind of something that's going to be affected by your smoke, the more you can burn, right? What we want, if I burn 100 acres, is my smoke to go up and get into the lower atmosphere and hit a lot of wind, be spread out and diffused over a large area and go away, just dissipate in the atmosphere. If I am further away from the highway, if I'm 5 miles from the road, it's got a long time to go up in the atmosphere and mix before it impacts that road. If I'm 1,500 feet from the road, my smoke doesn't go up very far before it hits the road. Does that make sense? So it's based on what's happening in the atmosphere. So trust me, I get weather texts 15 times a day, I think, telling me what's going on with the weather and what's going to happen tomorrow, because I need to know how much we can burn tomorrow or how much I can let other people burn, right? Because of the atmosphere and that public health, public safety piece. We do have some training for this. If you have burned before and you know how to burn, you can take the certified public manager class. We changed the law. There's state law, the South Carolina Prescribed Fire Act, that passed in 1994, the first time. We updated in 2012. But the state lawmakers agreed that if you're a prescribed burner and you understand the rules and you know what the sideboards are, the regulations you need to follow, and you've had experience burning and you've documented that experience, that you can get some liability protection for burning. One reason people don't burn is they're scared of liability, right? Somebody sues them because the smoke, hits their laundry on the line or gets ash in their pool or causes an asthma attack. It can be something severe. People were not burning because they're scared of liability. So our lawmakers, I visited every sitting senator in 2012 and explained to them how important forestry was to their district, how much of an economic benefit it was for agriculture and forestry, and why we need to burn it, right? I don't want to offend anybody. Any elected officials or trial attorneys in here? It's okay if they are, but who's in our lawmakers, right? A lot of them are attorneys, a lot of them are very hyper aware of liability stuff. And to me, it's amazing that our state lawmakers passed a law saying if you do everything by the book and you do a good plan, you're an experienced burner, then you get some liability protection for managing our forests and keeping our fuel loads low and maintaining our ecosystem, right? It's a big deal. So the course covers a lot of stuff I've covered tonight, but it covers the rules and why you can and can't burn, how many tons of stuff you can burn on a certain day, how far away you need to be, planning to burn, executing the burn, going back after the fact to evaluate whether you did a good job or not, or if there were any impacts. So it doesn't teach you how to burn, but it teaches you the rules and sideboards. And if you do this course, you pass the test, do the pre-work, show up at class, pass the test, and do 5 burns after you take it, you can get certified as a prescribed fire manager. And if you do everything by the book on your next burn, you get some liability protection. Because the lawmakers said the burning's in the public interest. If it's done right, it's to the benefit of everybody, and we want more people to burn. Really what it amounts to. So I said we were burning about 500,000 acres a year. I think we need to burn 1.2 million acres a year in South Carolina to maintain our ecosystem. We're burning half what we should. So our protection, the unincorporated areas, is almost 14 million acres. 13.6, I think. So if it's unincorporated areas, that's our protection. So our rules don't apply in city limits or incorporated areas, but we are the primary for the other areas. Not all that is forested, some of that's agriculture and some of it's road right away and other stuff, but and I did that based on hardwood in the mountains, maybe doesn't need to burn every 5 years like pines on the coast, but maybe they need to burn every 7 or 8 years. We did some analysis of that. So we're burning half what we need to be when the air quality is making it harder for us to burn, because nobody wants to burn and impact people, right? We're not trying to, nobody does. So the air quality is making it harder. The houses moving out into the woods and, where the hoods meet the woods, right? The wildland urban interface makes it harder to do a burn. There's a landowner I know that's been burning for 3 generations on their property. There's one little 10-acre inholding that somebody built a house on, and they're suing them to stop them from burning what they burned for generations because they don't like smoke. Well, I don't know how that's going to come out, but if we don't burn as more, or at least what we're doing now, and increase that, we're going to have more fuel buildup, but we might end up like other places that have fuel problems and make it difficult to catch up, right? So yes, ma'am.
Burning every.
No, not most.
Once a year.
So there's a lot of research now so think about this. If I do a prescribed burn on 100 acres, I'm gonna pick a day when I burn 50% of the surface fuel, right? I wanna burn some of that fuel and I wanna, kill some of the brush that's in the way because quail don't like it or red-cockaded woodpeckers don't like it, whatever I'm in. I'm not trying to burn it down to bare soil. I'm trying to burn some of that fuel. I want to burn low flame lengths, 2 to 3 feet where I can keep it inside the lines. I don't want a 20-foot flame at my fire break because that's gonna escape or maybe have a lot better chance. I'm gonna burn it when the wind's blowing it away from the houses, when the fire's not gonna move too fast and not be too intense. But there is smoke coming off of that. Think about a wildfire. When do wildfires burn? The worst day possible, when it's really dry and high winds and it's gonna burn further down into the soil, right? More fuel is consumed, it burns hotter, there's more gases coming off, more pollutants coming off of it because the heat's rising and it's pulling stuff in the atmosphere. There's all kind of things. So like I said on my first slide, it's either gonna burn the day we choose to when we know where the smoke's going and we can keep it where we want it for the most, things happen, but we do a pretty good job overall of managing our fires. Or it's gonna burn on a wildfire where it runs to your backyard and we're trying to save the house and it's burning more intensely, it's killing all the trees, right? So my family land, I burn every 3 to 5 years. And I go put it in the fire break and now my kids light it and I tell them what to do. It's pretty cool, right? And they know how to do this, right? But I burn it regularly, so there's never a huge amount of fuel. Right? But then you throw in something like Hurricane Helene that hit last year this time, the mountains on the western side of our state have 3 or 5 or 20 times the fuel they did 2 years ago. So burning is a challenge, right? Bigger fuel smolders, produces smoke for days. Gets dry, it burns more intensely because there's more energy coming off, more energy release. It creates control problems. Our bulldozers can't push that stuff out of the way as fast. So fire break production goes down, right? All kind of other things that cascade down. So, but very few places are burned every year, although some quail plantations do like to burn it. They like grass habitat. Yes.
We live in more of a residential area and, burn their yard waste.
Right.
Then they call the local fire department, get a permit to do it, hopefully.
Yep.
And, now when it's dry, like you're saying we are in now, do these local fire departments hand out these, permits and allow people to burn?
For
So-
the Zoom room, will you summarize the question for you?
Yeah. So the question was, in residential areas, people call to get a permit to burn, and the question was, do fire departments manage those, right? And maybe not give those when it's not an opportune time to burn, is that what you're?
Yeah.
So if it's in the county and unincorporated areas, actually, they're calling me, they're calling our number. We have a 1-800 number in each county. And he called for Charleston County, he says, hey, this is the burn notification line for Charleston County. You have to have a fire break, you have to stay with us safe, you can't burn household garbage or tires or shingles, anything. You can't even burn a 2x4. If it grows there, you can burn it, basically what law says. And it says today fire danger is high or medium or low or extreme, or there's a burn ban. So if we do a burn ban, it's reflected on there. If the county fire department does a burn ban, they tell me about it. That message says there's a burn ban in Charleston County by order of the Charleston Fire Department. So we change it every day based on what the fire danger is or the status that day. So you may be able to burn in Charleston, but in Dorchester, they may not have that, but it's different jurisdiction from the local state. Okay? So good question. And we get somewhere around 500,000 calls a year notify us about backyard burns. So if you think that 60% of my fires come from those burns, on a day when I get 5,000 burns, I know I'm gonna be busy. I check that line at noon and say, well, we got a bunch of burns, let's all go fight fire, because we know it's gonna happen.
Are most of those kept under control by the local fire department?
A lot of them are, yeah, and if they can get there quick and spray some water and keep it contained, they wear, this is my fire suit, my pants and my boots are all I wear, in a yellow suit and a hard hat, right? I don't wear the heavy bunker gear, because that's designed to go into a house and protect you. It's heavy. I walked 26 miles on a fire 2 weeks ago, right? I gotta be mobile and you can't wear all that stuff. So they don't have the right tools to go in there in the woods. $1 million fire truck doesn't go in the woods, right? It's not the right tool. They call us, we bring our bulldozers or our air tankers or something else to stop. And their job really is to protect the homes and structures while we go in the woods, because that's what we're equipped for. I don't have anything to go inside the burning house, right? So that's sort of the division between us, but they handle, the majority of those are stopped by the fire department. Yes, sir.
When you're burning a woods, hasn't been burning a while, it's got a heavy load on the floor. How do you keep control of the fire and not go up into the trees?
So you do that by choosing the right day. If I was burning a re-entering fire, or putting fire back into a place I haven't seen in a long time, it's difficult, right? If you try to burn too much at once, then it's gonna be too intense, it's gonna kill the trees, it's probably gonna get out. So, and I'm talking generally, but I would wait until it rained, and I would give it about a day to dry out, and I'd try and burn it a day or two later, when just some of that fuel's wet and a little bit of it's dry. So that it's not all likely to burn. That you don't need to know this, but if an 8-inch log is 20% moisture content, it's not gonna burn. If it's at 12%, it is gonna burn. So you need to know the moisture content, and you need to know how many hours of sunlight a day, how much wind, the wind wicks away moisture, right? Solar radiation makes it evaporate. How many days it's been since rain. So you would do it by choosing the right fuel conditions, how wet it is, the right weather conditions, how much wind there is or low humidity, and you can also try to do it when the smoke's going in the direction that's favorable, right away from the most people. And you would light it, the way you light it makes a difference too. If you light it, if I'm trying to burn between here and here, and I light this side and the wind pushes, it's gonna push it. It's gonna be an aggressive head fire. If I want to burn it slow, I would light it on this side against the wind and burn back against the wind, right? The wind's not pushing it, but it moves really slowly across, right? So the way you ignite it, how many days it's been since rain, the fuel moisture and the wind are the primary things. It's an art and a science kind of, you know. Somebody told me, experience doesn't get just after you need it. But you really need to pay attention to the fuels and the weather and how many days it's been since rain and decide. If there's 10 inches of fuel you need to get rid of, try and take off 2 inches the first burn. You know, take off 2 inches next time, to do 3 or 4 burns over time instead of one burn to burn 10 inches. Because you're burning a lot of fuel. And it's a lot more intense, a lot more energy released, higher flame lengths, embers, and everything else sort of follows. Yes. Good question. Like this.
Q&A up there.
We can go to that. Sure, I'm good. I don't know how much time I got, but I'll stay here as long as I. All right, go ahead.
A couple of thoughts come to mind.
Couple of thoughts come to mind. Here recently, there's been a lot of discussion about health issues with firefighters. You guys addressing any of that?
So we were talking about this earlier. So I'm on the National Risk Committee for wildfires. I'm the only state representative on there, representing all the states. There's not an approved breathing apparatus for wildland fire right now. My whole career, the idea has been avoid smoke. Don't stand in the smoke. Don't park in the smoke. If it gets smoky, back away. We can do a direct attack on the fire. This is the fire and I stand right here. I'm as close as I can get, right? If it's too smoky, we're supposed to go to an indirect attack. Back up 100 feet where the smoke's not as much. It's basically where you are on the landscape is how we've been managing smoke. We're testing a breathing device now. It's not a tank on your back. You can't wear a tank full of oxygen in a wildfire, right? So it has to be something that filters. It has to be light because we walk all the time. So there's one that mounts on your belt and it's got a rechargeable battery that you can swap out, and you don't wear it all the time, but if you're in smoke, you're supposed to put it on. You aren't supposed to do it when you're digging hand lines because your respiration is too much for that kind of filter. So we're trying to come up with one that works. Just 2 weeks ago, I think the U.S. Forest Service said they would issue N95 masks, but you can't wear it when you're digging fire mine. You wear it if you're around the fire and the fire camp where it's smoky. So I don't think there was a lot of research until the last few years about the impact of that on, wildland firefighters. We've studied it in structure fire forever, but it really is just now kind of coming out about the danger to wildland firefighters. So, it's a concern everybody has, and I get 10 years ago, nobody asked about that, and now everybody's asked about that. So it is a big deal.
That was a detailed question. I have one more that's a general question. You've got a lot of area to manage. And
Sure.
I'm looking at points indicating numbers of fires per year and so forth. But do you have, shall we say, a real-time management tool, GIS or whatever, that can really look at the areas and ability to burn versus ability to burn,
Sure.
right? And be able to manage it on a macro scale in any way?
I do. I have a lot of tools. I'll show you some of those in a minute. So we have access to satellites that pick up fires to tell us if there's a potential wildfire, right? I've got 10 airplanes that look around for fires when we think when we think there might be fires or the fire weather's favorable, we fly and try and find the fires. My goal is to stop it as small as I can before it threatens anybody, right? We have the Southern Wildfire Risk Assessment. I'll show you in a minute. You can pull up your house and see what your wildfire risk is, or your fire district can generate a map, say in my fire district, these areas are most likely to have wildfires or the most homes threatened, right? We develop tools like that. We have airnow.gov has a fire section that picks up smoke and tells us they're picking up smoke in an area, and we can cross-check that with prescribed fires or known fires, say, well, that might not be a fire we know about. Just this week, we put up 2 fire detection cameras that use AI, and they're sort of our pilots, but they're in the mountains. They 365 days a year, 24/7, spin around and look for possible fires, and they text us if they think there's a wildfire. And so we're building those tools with the satellites and the cameras and all this to get better at that. Because what I want to do with every fire prevent is somebody not being at risk, and firefighters and the public, nobody's getting threatened, right? So that's really where we're heading, is harnessing some of this. I've got a drone that lights fires from the sky, right? It's 6 feet wide and I get to fly it. It's pretty cool. But after wildfire, I can fly that same drone with the camera and use AI to find all the hot spots where it's still smoldering. And I've been the firefighter that went and dug over there because we thought it was there and it was actually here, and that's terrible. I want to tell the firefighter, it's right under your feet, dig right there, and you'll find the hot spot, put it out. Because when we're trying to keep a fire from rekindling, we want to put out everything that's hot, right? So we got a lot of tools, and the challenge right now is keeping up with what's available and deciding what works and getting the funding to maintain that and equip ourselves with it. So, but I've got 3 dispatch centers. I've got Florence, Walterboro, and Newberry. I've got 36 dispatchers, and some of those are 24/7. And I've got planes that I schedule every day with my counterparts. How many planes I put up to look for fires based on what we think we'll see. I've got access to the satellite 24/7 that picks up potential wildfires. I've got a lot of cool tools. Compared to when I started, I had none of that. I had a fire tower, right? So we're getting there, and I'm trying to keep us that direction. So yes.
Before I go to Christine, maybe in the Zoom room, Laura, has anyone put anything in the chat?
Actually, the question in the chat from Dennis is exactly what Daryl just talked about. It said all the fire towers are decommissioned. So how do you find the fires now? Do you use drones?
So we got rid of fire towers in 1994. Most of our fire tower operators became our dispatchers, and we started using aircraft to find the fires. Aircraft are not the best tool for that. Once everybody got a cell phone, we very seldom find a fire before somebody calls in, right? So now we don't fly the whole county. We fly the parts of the county that aren't traversed by roads where somebody's not likely to see. So we can fly less, right? Target the areas that are most likely to have a fire that goes undetected, and sort of focus our manpower on the most need, really, is what we try to do.
So my question is, we've got good fire, we've got bad fire. Is there this middle zone where you have a wildfire and you're just like, well, let's wait it out?
So that's a good question. So the law says I have to put out the wildfire.
Really?
State law says my job is to put out fires, because if that fire is on your land and it's your kid's college fund or your retirement money and I let it burn, somebody's going to be mad that I let it burn, right? However, if I think that it's unsafe to put a firefighter in there, if it's too intense, or we can't access it, the tractor's bogged down and it's gonna put some at risk, we will in a heartbeat decide for a safety reason. We're not gonna go fight the fire. We're gonna start out here at this road, and when it comes to us, we'll stop it here, right? National forests, a lot of the escape prescribed fires you see on the western forest are ones that they see out there and they know it's not near anybody. It's kind of doing its own thing. And I was on a team that did that for 10 years. We would go, I would do fire in the Bob Marshall Wilderness, right? There's nothing for 40 miles. There's a fire. And I said, all right, if the fire gets to this point, we need to start doing something, because if it gets here, we can't stop it from impacting the house, right? So you set trigger points. Say if it gets to this point, but if it's private land, by and large, we put it out and try to keep it as small as possible, because if I let that burn, all of a sudden I've decided to make the fire get bigger, and there's a lot of liability that comes to our agency, right? So if I do it for safety, I'm pretty comfortable with that, saying it wasn't safe to go fight the fire and we decided to let it burn this extra half mile and stop it where we had good ground and we could prepare and get ready for it. But if I just decide I don't want to do it, and I'm gonna let it burn because I was gonna burn this anyway, the liability comes back to us, really is what it amounts to.
Sounds a little frustrating, because.
It can be.
Okay, here's this 100-acre property and they're gonna prescribe burn it tomorrow, but it caught on fire today.
But if it burns too hot in the wildfire, all of a sudden I'm getting sued for the damage, for the timber damage, right? So it's a difficult, it's not an easy call. But for safety, I do that all the time. We're gonna burn it out because the bulldozer's not gonna stand up, or the flames are too high. You can go direct attack on a 8-foot flame with a bulldozer. I'll put a bulldozer right next to an 8-foot flame, and I'll put a hand crew next to a 4-foot flame. But if it's 6 feet, I'm not putting a hand crew there. Me on the ground, I'm not going near. I'll back up and I'll go 200 yards away and build a fire line and wait for the fire to come to me, but I won't, that's where the smoke avoidance comes in and the risk avoidance and all that stuff kind of touched it. It's a lot to process, but you get pretty dialed into it when you do it a little bit. Y'all are asking good questions this morning.
So what happens to the people that start fires,
So
accidentally or on purpose?
So I have 54 officers, right? Most of our, answer your question directly, our bulldozers are in every county, right? Based on how many fires and the amount of fire. Horry County has 6 bulldozers because we have a lot of fire. Cherokee County may only have 2 because we don't have a lot of fires. The fuels are not as conducive to it, right? So, but their supervisor, the firefighters are on the dozer, their supervisor is what we call our fire management officer. They are our frontline supervisors and our law enforcement officers by and large. And we have some investigators. But when they show up fighting the fire, the bulldozer calls them, the firefighters says, I need a supervisor here and you direct traffic and figure out how to fight the fire. As soon as the fire is over, those same folks turn around and investigate the fire, right? The Highway 31 fire was 19,523 acres, and me and one guy figured out pretty easily that it came from an area this big, right? There's a whole process of fire investigation protocol that you can find indicators say the fire came from here, and then you look in that spot and say, well, is there a cigarette butt, or is there a match, or is there, some kind of device? When we find an incendiary, when there are general arson charges, there's woods arson charges. If you light a fire on your land, say your backyard leaf pile and it escapes and gets in your neighbor's property, there's a lot of things to have. You should have called us to notify, right? If you didn't notify us, we can write a penalty for that, a citation. If you didn't have a fire break, you haven't followed the cross law. That's another one. If it leaves your property, there's law the charge is allowing fire to spread to lands of another. You can burn your own property, but you can't burn anybody else's, right? So we can stack charges if we choose to. We can work with people. Basically, if you're nice to us and nobody's house got burned or nothing major happened, it's pretty easy. But if you burn somebody's house, somebody's shed, or somebody's timber, somebody's liable. So we do have charges based on the situation. Intentional fires, if I prove that you intentionally set somebody's property, that's a whole different level. It goes from being a misdemeanor to a felony, right? So there's all kind of things that happen with that level. And we have 3 stages of felony charges, right, depending on the severity of the case.
The teenager start.
So the fire at Table Rock, the teenagers, unintentional, right? They didn't try to do it. There was not a burn ban. Well, no, there was a burn ban. They didn't intentionally do it. The prosecutors decided to give their pretrial intervention. Those kids had no previous records. They still could be liable civilly. So the people who had timber burned or had fire breaks put on their property to stop the fire could still do a civil case against them. But the criminal charges were, in that case, were done on pretrial intervention. They were first time ever offenders with anything, and they really were not trying to do it. So that was a decision the prosecutor made, not us, but I'm okay with that. Yes,
If it's a civil thing like that, and the kids are underage, are the parents responsible?
they could be. And the question was, if it's a civil charge and they're underage, the parents can be held responsible. If it's civil, it will actually go against the parents' thing.
You go back.
I'll repeat your question if you want.
I'm talking generally across the country. If you go back, 87, 90 years, fire suppression was sort of the dominant policy. We have a lot more consciousness now about that we need to go the other direction. Has policy, how far has policy shifted at this point? I'm talking very general on this.
Right.
But has it caught up, or are we still needing more education? Bring it more up?
So I'll say the question was based on, fire suppression in the, early part of the last century, and, every fire had to be up by 10 a.m. and we've learned a lot, right? And the question was, have we, had the policy kept up? And it has to a large extent. On many places, you can decide that we're gonna let this fire burn because, like I said, safety reasons, or if it's on a national forest, maybe it's something back to your point that maybe they were gonna burn anyway, and if this fire is not doing any more damage than that prescribed burn was, let's just let it go, right? It gets more difficult on private lands because one fire in South Carolina may burn 10 different landowners, right? And you may be okay letting it burn, but your neighbor doesn't. So, there's other factors. That being said, there's a lot of movement now. We're facing some changes at the federal level on wildfire policy, right? The National Wildland Fire Service, the job announcement came out yesterday for the new director of Wildland Fire for all of the National Fire Service. So that will take the policy from Fish and Wildlife Service, Park Service, Bureau of Land Management, Bureau of Indian Affairs, and eventually the USDA Forest Service into one. So there's a lot of changes coming. So whether we still have some of that flexibility going forward remains to be seen. But a good question. In South Carolina, we have a pretty good situation. We do. But it's not that way in states where most of the land is federal. They have a lot of different parameters to work within, so. All right, one or two more things, guys, real quick. All right, I'm gonna skip ahead. I want you to see this. This is the end of my presentation. If you're curious, go to southernwildfirerisk.com. This is a project that all of us, the fire chiefs, were meeting. We were in Daytona, Florida. I'll be honest, we were eating wings, drinking beer when this idea hatched. We were debriefing the meeting, and we said, wouldn't it be cool? I know where the bad fire spots are in South Carolina, right? Wouldn't it be cool if I could put it on a map and show that? And so that's what this came out of. We know what the fuel is across the landscape. We paid for this project called Landsat, and it takes satellite imagery and it uses heat detection to tell me if this piece of ground is a field or a pine forest or a hardwood forest or a lake, right? And that's updated every couple of years. So we know where the fuel is. I know if a fire starts in hardwood litter and the humidity is 20% and the wind's 25 miles an hour, I can calculate how fast the fire is likely to move, right? This product does that for you, and it also knows where the homes are. So if you go to southernwildfirerisk.com and put in your address, it'll pull up a map of your neighborhood and show you the risk. Red is bad. This is the Charleston area. You see a lot of red. A lot of that on the coast is marshes, because if a marsh is burning and it hits the land, there's a lot of fire. It's really intense, right? A lot of embers. But if you look on Daniel Island, there's some place where there's some blocks of woods that are surrounded by houses. If that block of wood starts on fire, it's going to threaten houses, right? So you can look at your address. If you sign up for the professional viewer, it's free. You just have to give us an email address. You can put a Google Earth file in there, download a report, a 30-page report for your county or your area of what the fire risk is, right? We use this to develop something called community wildfire protection plans. People forget that they have some responsibility, right? If you ever buy a house in a floodplain, do you hear about flood insurance and get told you're in a floodplain? Do you ever get told there's wildfire risk? No, right? So people are buying houses next to all these beautiful woods because they like the way it looks, and they don't realize that might be a fire prone area. It might be hard to see in their house. And we were talking about defensible space earlier, right? I need 30 feet between the hoods, the hoods and the woods, right? Between your door and the woods, so I can get in there with a dozer or a fire engine and stop the fire, right? So if you're in a fire prone area and you see on here that it is that way, maybe you clear some, or you don't put your propane tank or your firewood on your back porch, or you don't use wooden shingles for roofs, you use Class A shingles, or you put some kind of fencing around your deck so the embers don't go under your deck and start on fire. You don't use pine straw landscaping because if it's dry, the pine straw is going to ignite, it's going to melt your siding and your house is going to go up, right? So there are ways to identify your risk. If your community is interested, I have a staff of people that work for me that go do assessments in neighborhoods, and they will write a community wildfire protection plan with the fire department. This is just like Charleston Fire looking at a building downtown and doing a pre-plan for a high-rise structure. They do that for all the high-rise. If this building catches on fire, we're bringing 10 engines and 100 people because we're going to get a lot of people out and get water to the top, right? This is pre-planning for wildfire. That's what we're trying to do. It's a community wildfire plan. We could go to your house and say, clear some brush around your backyard, cut the wax myrtle that's up against your siding, change your straw to something else, and we'll be able to defend your house. I can't guarantee I'll save it, but it gives me a better chance of protecting your house and saving it, right? A neighborhood with one way in and out. We ran that Myrtle Beach Barefoot Landing, had 3,000 people, and there's one way in and out. We had a wildfire threaten it. We lost the 100-something homes. They were all trying to come out while we were trying to go in, right? Now we went in since then and we put in dry hydrants and added more water. We used grant fund to put an extra exit out of their neighborhood so we can come in the back and they can go out the front, right? It's not hard, but somebody's got to notice it and do something about it. So this is our tool. Like I say, red's bad. Takeaways though, fires happen here all the time. Most are caused by people. Most of our rare species in the Southeast need some sort of fire, right? Red-cockaded woodpeckers and Venus flytraps and quail and turkey, all those need some type of fire. We could talk about how much or, how we do it, but they all need fire at some level to maintain their habitats. We need to burn more to maintain our function, and people need to realize they have risk and do something about it. That's really what I'd like you to take home from here. So I know I've talked long, but if you want cool forestry commission cooling towel, I brought some. Next time you work in your yard, you can look sporty. How about that?
That is super cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's awesome. So I told y'all that story about the Pecos Wilderness earlier, and that was out west, and I didn't tell you that I am a fan of prescribed burning tech. Even though I went through that and my heart hurt by what I saw, tonight did help me understand a little bit more about the differences between Western fires and Eastern fires, and I completely appreciate that. So yeah, there is someone here who is going to tell us about a different burning situation in fossil fuels, and give us a little bit of information about an upcoming event.
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Belton Olsop with the Charleston Climate Coalition, and I'm part of a group that's working to challenge the ESCO gas plant and pipeline that Dominion is trying to build. Who here is familiar with this project?
Coming to the A space.
Yeah, in the center of the A space, and they're trying to build one of the biggest gas plants in the country on the ESCO River. So we don't think that is a wise choice to make in this day and age, a massive gas plant. It is a campaign to stop it. I have a petition I'd love you all to sign if you're interested. But specifically, I want to talk about the fact that there is going to be a river ride on October 25th that's going to pass by the site where they want to build this gas plant, a former coal plant. It's being put on by the ESCO River Canoe and Kayak Commission. And us activists are also joining in. We'll have some information for folks. We'll have some signs for a little kayak activism. But it's a way to be out in nature. Yeah. A way to be out in nature and learn more about this gas plant project that we really think be huge for South Carolina. If you're interested, come talk to me. I'll be over there by all those pamphlets. I'll have a way for you to get more information. It's gonna be October 25th. There'll be a river ride and kayak for the planet. Thank you.
What's the alternative?
So
What do you want to do?
a couple states have been investing really big in solar and battery the last couple of years quite successfully. Colorado has gotten much more capacity than this gas plant will give, just with solar and battery. The technology for battery has really helped with the baseload issue of, when do you have the energy? So we have technology, we sort of have alternative paths that are available to us. Certainly doubling down, putting all of our eggs in this giant mega project, $2.5 billion, wouldn't be built for another 10 years, gas plants, would be very unwise, I think, yeah.
I've seen solar farms too, and that's ugly too.
Yeah, so
Across the field that had cows, hay, and now you got panels going for miles, that's ugly.
yeah, we've been talking to folks in Colvin County, or, it's a discussion, but basically this mega project, we think is the idea. And you can talk to me more about that at the station. Thanks y'all, it's late night. Good night.
There is solar agricultural solar. Agrivoltaics. And there are a lot of farmers who are coming around to the idea that it's actually a good thing for them and their herds. And that they can actually have more cows or more livestock in general. And their livestock will be healthier and better fed, and it saves water. So, you might think it's ugly, but other people are coming around to the idea that it's actually very beneficial to not only their bottom line, but their animals and the environment. So maybe you'll rethink that. I have a video that I'll put on our Facebook page.
Best in it.
Not too late.
Yeah, so anyway, that's coming up. Thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. We hope you learned a lot, and come back next month and come on our outings, go kayaktivism and have fun. Good night, everybody.